So speaking about getting our house in order and caring for our staff, COVID-19 has been a game changer in many ways for many industries. Even the way IPRS has been conducting our activities has
Mhm.
changed. How has COVID-19 impacted the way Diamond is engaging with your stakeholders, both internal and external?
I think internally, a lot of us have been saying in the first few months, we said, oh, okay, this isn't too bad, Our engine is actually quite well oiled. Everything's working. Reports are coming in on time. Everything is business as usual. And then after a couple of months, people were saying we actually missed the face-to-face interaction. I think while you can do a video call, you don't get the nuance of, body language, or even that Friday, normally, by 6 p.m. we'd be like, okay, let's go down for a drink and catch up. So I think while we miss that, we've been able to adapt well, and we've been good in engaging our investors.
Okay.
Mm.
So there are bright spots amid this whole pandemic gloom. For Singapore, the financial sector seems to be one of them. How do you think the financial industry, has responded to the needs of employees and customers in this challenging time for the rest of the world?
I think we've been good. I mean, given that we are an international financial hub, a lot of our clients anyway have been in the US and Europe. So even pre-COVID, it's we used to be able to travel, but now that we travel, we haven't been traveling, or it will be less frequent. I think we just need to up our level of engagement and make sure that the conversation is ongoing. Right? You don't say anymore, okay, see you in a month's time and we can go into in-depth conversation. So now you keep that level of conversation going at all times,
Okay.
and you have to be accessible to your clients and
Accessible.
investors. Yes.
Right. And
Yeah.
see, on that point of being accessible and, in some ways also transparent,
Mm.
the financial industry unfortunately hasn't fared that well on reputation surveys internationally for many years. It seems to be predicated by the idea that the industry is focused on the short term, on shareholders and not the broader community, and singularly on the bottom line. On the other hand, some institutions, financial institutions, are redefining what success looks like for their stakeholders. They measure the impact on the environment and the community as much as they are focused also on doing well from a commercial standpoint. What can communication chiefs in the financial space do to restore that levels of trust and credibility in the industry?
I think from our point of view, we know that it's the right thing to do to be socially responsible. I mean, data shows that in the next couple of decades, the transfer of wealth from baby boomers to millennials is going to be expected to be more than $30 trillion. And just in the US alone, they expect millennials to invest up to 15 to 20 trillion in socially acceptable or related responsible funds. And this is just in the US, right? So of late, there's been a lot of talk around ESG, environmental, social, and governance policies. And it's the right thing to do with trends like global sustainability challenges, data privacy, or regulatory pressure. It's mutually beneficial for an institution, for a firm, for a company, and for clients as well. At Diamond here, we will follow the UN PRI principles, UN principles for UN principles for responsible investment. What it does is it's a body that oversees responsible investment for different firms. So UN PRI now has about 1,800 signatories and 68 trillion in assets under management.
How how um how much of a correlation do you see, or do you see it as a cause and effect that companies or funds that are more friendly towards
Mhm.
ESG expectations or ESG standards with returns that they actually give to shareholders? What is Diamond Asia's perspective on that?
Oh, absolutely. A lot of data and research, if you go all the MSCI research, JP Morgan research has shown that companies that are involved in responsible investing do better and give better yields to their clients and investors.
I see. So what you're saying is that it also has become an expectation on the part of the investor, on part of the people who actually contribute toward the fund, right?
Yes, definitely. So like I said, it's mutually beneficial.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to now talk a little bit about the communication side of things. So there are many members in IPRS who are owners of communication agencies
Mhm.
or who are themselves employed in communication agencies. What, in your view, should agencies do? How do you think they should behave in order to be a good strategic partner with your team, your communication team at Dymon Asia Capital?
I think the key is, like I said earlier, open lines of communication and transparency, right? Sometimes it's you have to walk the middle ground. Your client will always have a point of view, and while the PR agency is subject matter expert, I think a lot of the times both parties will have a point of view that is validated by customer insight, data, and studies. And so the next thing to do is just to decide what in the long term is best and will shine a positive light on the company that the PR firm is working with.
Okay, and on that, in the same vein, could you share with the audience a little bit how is Dymon Asia Capital structured in terms of its communication function? I know you are driving CSR and communication at the same time.
Mhm.
Give us a little bit of a tour under the hood of how Dymon is structured from a comms standpoint.
Okay, so we have internal communications, and part of that internal communications straddles ESG as well. So I also drive diversity and inclusion, and we have a recreational committee. We get fairly competitive because we have some ex-national basketballers, badminton players, ATP tennis players. So we have a recreational committee that, well, pre-COVID used to do things like movie nights or competitive basketball. We have an internal table tennis competition because we feel like increased interaction intra and inter department and divisions helps. And then I also help run media relations.
Hmm.
So that's the external part of stuff. And of course, I work very closely with our chief of staff to make sure that whatever we drive is in line with what our managing partner's vision for the firm is.
And how do you then work and respond to very local opportunities or local opportunities to respond to comments in the different markets that Dymon is vested in?
So we work closely with the local dailies, and we also work with your international Bloomberg, Reuters, and I think sometimes your messaging is slightly different, right? Because the audience is slightly different. With the local dailies, we always emphasize that we're proudly Singaporean, and that we're based out of Asia, and we have an Asia view of the world.
Okay. So for those of you who've just joined this IPRS PR Leadership Series, we are delighted to have Sharmin Foo, Head of Communication and CSR of Dymon Asia Capital. Please post your questions for Sharmin in our Q&A panel, or if you'd like, you could also raise your hands if you'd like to ask a question. Our IPRS Secretariat will then unmute you and enable you to turn on your camera so that you can post your question directly to Sharmin. All right. So I'll be monitoring the panel, and if you have questions that you'd like to ask Sharmin directly, I'll see that your hands are up, and then we will unmute you, and so that you can ask the question. All right. Sharmin, thank you again for joining us. In this next part, we were talking briefly about how your communication team and function is structured in the region. We have also seen traditional channels of information and news get disintermediated, right? People are getting information from their social media feeds, and many are even subscribed to aggregated platforms. What does this shifting media landscape mean for Dymon Asia, and how you do communication?
I think gone are the days where press releases were embargoed on the PDF document and then sent to your traditional press mailboxes and saying, please see press release, right? These days, everything is instantaneous and it makes the world so much smaller and it makes us so much more interconnected. I mean, if you look at it, Trump tweets 10 times a day, and with just that 280 characters 10 times a day, they found that he affects the price dynamics of certain stocks in the markets. So JP Morgan actually created an index named after him, right?
Oh, really? Yeah.
I think he had a 2016 gaffe that was said the negative press COVFEFE COFE in 2016, and then
Yes.
they created an index named that. So I think the way to do it is business intelligence or media surveillance. There's a lot of business intelligence software out there, Tableau, MS Power BI, that you can look at. It aggregates what people are talking about. It helps keep your ears on the ground, and it helps to avoid reputational risk, build a credible reputation. Yeah.
Okay, and that actually segues quite nicely to what I want to ask you, because some members in our community are also interested in making career switches. Some of them are interested, might be open to making a switch into the financial sector. In your view, in this increasingly data-driven marketplace, what are some of the new skills that you think communication practitioners should acquire so that they can stay industry ready, they can stay ready to be competitive in communications for the financial sector?
Okay. I want to say that communication is not just about putting a message or building a brand. I think it's very important as well to be able to put together information and numbers, right? So like I said, if you use business intelligence or media surveillance, it's easier to stand your ground, to build your story, and to validate what you're going to say to your clients out there or to your audience out there. You see that in the latest US elections, they use cartograms instead of your traditional maps and, just your red and blue segregation. So every story that you tell should be able to be validated by data, pictographs, not just words anymore, right? References, right? Fact check is like the biggest thing right now.
And so for on that, where does Dymon Asia go looking around for talents as you bring on board people to value add to your communication function in Asia?
We go mainly by word of mouth, and we have a tangent program actually. So at Dymon, we believe that your background, your age doesn't matter, as long as you have the requisite grit, bounce back ability, willingness to work in a team. Dymon's more than happy to have you.
And what would you be looking for? Let's say if there was an applicant for a communication function.
Definitely, I think someone who would fit into our culture, who I would say could be a plug and play. Yeah.
Okay. One of the things that are of interest to us is career journeys and mentorships. You in our earlier conversation, you talk a little bit about your own journey. Could you share with us a little bit about that and the role that mentors or senior advocates in this sector plays in helping to advance a career like yours?
I remember my regional head of marketing at ANZ used to say to me, remember to always have a point of view when you take this seat at the table so that you can value add. So I think I've carried that for many years as well. And I think that mentorship really helps because someone who can help guide you and set you up for success. If you're looking to make the switch to the financial sector, it'll be useful to have a mentor who can help navigate the landscape for you. And just the wealth of knowledge and insights that they will have will definitely help. I mean, I've been very lucky to have had a couple of mentors who have guided me along the way. So I'm a huge advocate of that.
Do your mentors mainly come from the same company that you work for?
No, not at all. From the financial industry, but from outside the firm.
Okay.
Mm,
We've received some questions in advance from people. I think this one comes from a student.
okay.
So this question I'd like to ask you is there are several students who are studying now. They will
Mm,
be graduating with a communication degree.
okay.
They're likely to be disillusioned, with the current economic climate and the jobs market. What advice would you give them as they embark on a career in communication and public relations?
I would say make sure you network. I mean, if you're going to do an internship, hustle, network, talk to as many people as you can. And whether it's a part-time job thereafter or not, just take it up for the time being or contract role and just keep going, even if it's part-time writing or editing.
So, on that note, right, there are students who might not be able to find the ideal role immediately after graduating.
Mm.
Would you suggest that they take on roles that may not necessarily pay and remunerate you in an ideal way to your expectation first, so that you can acquire that experience?
Yeah, I would say just put as much experience as you can on your resume so that and use it as a stepping stone.
Okay, okay. Another question that I'd like to ask you is, Dymon Asia Capital works with a lot of experts, both from the analyst community as well as your internal spokespeople.
Mm.
Communication, on the other hand, um, isn't necessarily seen to have is it doesn't necessarily have a seat at the strategy table and the decision making table sometimes. How do you juggle that when you work with experts, and make sure that you are always at the seat, and counsel is taken when you have counsel to give?
So we have had instances where we've had to deal with crisis communication, and I think that's when management realized it's important for the comms person to have a seat at the table so that it is an ongoing relationship with the media. And sometimes it helps when you need to do crisis comms to have a personal relationship and to speak to the journalist and say, hey, can you give me a couple more hours? Or I'm putting more information together for you. Can you please just give me another day or two? Or you can work on, um, trying to make the headline more positive in some instances, or even a different point of view. So I'd say that if management believes in building brand and in image and reputation, they will let the comms person take a seat at the table.
Might you be able to share with us an example of a challenge or a crisis that actually happened that would require comms to lead from the front in that way?
I think a lot of the times, because the hedge fund industry is only so large, people movement uh, come under a lot of scrutiny. So what we do is we try and make sure that we don't jeopardize anyone's career before they join us, or the news goes through the proper channels instead of going through hearsay. We've had a couple of times where we've had to actually stymie or stop rumors. So even when we were in talks with other people. So in that instance, I think having a direct line to the relevant journalist really helped. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, to just
Well,
pick up the phone and say, this is not true at all. And I will let you know if and when a new person joins us. Right. Yeah.
I like to just follow up on that question a little bit. When you mention about being alive and sensitive towards the shifting media landscape, media relations still is important for the way you do communication, right?
Mm.
What are some of the tools and the platforms that you have that you use internally at Diamond to help you to manage this whole cacophony of activities that are happening almost simultaneously across so many different markets?
So we use media surveillance mainly. What we do is because our private equity arm has a lot of portfolio companies, and then we keep a close watch on our competitors as well. And we also, I mean, there's a whole bunch of publications like your hedge fund management insights, institutional investors. So we keep a close tab on all of that. And what we do is we use a media surveillance aggregator, Meltwater, to help us keep track of that. And just to make sure that, every day we're kept abreast of what's going on as well. Yeah.
Okay. And now it leads me to the last question. Time has passed us by, and I'm conscious that we have only blocked out about half an hour. This is meant to be a short introduction, actually, a profile of our members to the broader IPRS community. So I'm going to just ask you the last question. And that very much revolves around IPRS and the role
Mm.
that a convening body like IPRS plays in this day and age. You're a member of
Mhm.
IPRS and you have been a supporter of the institute. What do you see in your view is the value of IPRS today, and why should people be a member and be active on IPRS?
I think it's important to have a galvanizing body. I think our IPRS makes a good accreditation body, and from the standpoint of, having the breadth of knowledge and depth of insights to tap on for PR professionals, I think that it's very important.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you so much for being that generous, Shamin. On that note, I'd like to thank you so much for your time. I'm sure that this community will continue to benefit from the generous sharing of communication leaders and thought leaders like yourself.